This is R1 and 3 Autoethnography with your host, Steven. On this episode, Nicholas and I have a conversation about our drinking, the reasons behind our drinking, and how it affects our mental illnesses. On this podcast, we talk about our lived experiences with mental illness. So before we get started, you gotta know that we are not medical professionals, and you should see your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being. Okay, well this is gonna be more of a conversation than an interview today. But anyway, I think that a good place to start is kind of where a lot of our drinking started, and that would be in our first few years of university. So
the glory days.
Yeah, the glory days. Tell me a little bit about your second year.
Well, when second year came along, I wasn't done. I wasn't over partying yet, but that kind of developed into a bit of a bigger issue. And I found myself not necessarily drinking with people more, but just drinking overall more. More so alone but in the presence of others, but being the only one drinking, basically. My drinking went up excessively in the second year compared to the first year, which is really surprising because you'd think by the end of the first year I would have had my fill.
Or you'd think it'd be the other way around. But yeah, how much is more drinking? How much were you doing a day?
Oh God, well, well, you lift me.
I know, yeah. I know the answer to this question, but
oh God, all right. Let's see. On average, 2 750 milliliter bottles of vodka a week, which is not. And then on top of that, I would drink beer too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so not good. On top of that, I wouldn't necessarily even mix the vodka either. I would just drink it straight, which thank God I can't do that anymore without the thought of puking.
Well, yeah, that's good. Here's a fun fact for you. According to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, heavy drinking for men is defined as consuming more than 4 drinks on any day or more than 14 drinks a week. So we can just assume that you met that threshold. Numbers. Yeah, well, you're right about that.
Just joking.
Yeah, for me, it was literally the other way around, because second year I pretty much gave up drinking to get my shit together and get into kinesiology, but we weren't really that close first year. I've spoken about it before in a few other episodes, but my drinking was basically anywhere between 10 to 20 drinks a day, and that was not something that I'm proud of, but it's something that Leva and I did together. So I guess it's it wasn't exactly like you where we were just drinking, but we were kind of drinking socially. But yeah, it was pretty brutal with how much we were doing.
Well, when it comes to first year, I wouldn't really drink until I went out, but that changed in the second year, where in second year I was casually drinking a lot more than first year, I found.
What was your motivation behind all that drinking?
Honestly, I just think I thought it felt good. It wasn't any certain escape.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's just, it feels nice being intoxicated.
Yeah, so it wasn't something Nicholas needs to escape his anxiety, depression, all that shit. No. It was just Nicholas wants to feel good.
Yeah. Pretty much. But also, not saying that drinking didn't have any impact on my mental health at all. You've known this over the past year, but when I drink, I get a little anxious.
Yeah.
I'm scared. Oh, what if I make an ass of myself in front of people. And so, like, my anxiety goes up, and I find that I enjoy myself less when I'm around people. Or, like, I enjoy drinking a lot less when I'm around people, because I'm always scared, oh god, what if I'll come across as, like, this drunk, and just, like, yeah, just, like, be an ass around people. Like, I try, so when I've been drinking and I'm around people, it's like I put an extra effort to not look like a fool, and that kind of kills my enjoyment of the evening of being around.
That's fair. I remember in the last episode we spoke about that too, where we talked about your anxiety, and you said that one of the main things about your anxiety is you trying not to make a fool of yourself. So it sounds like it's just like super anxiety if you're drunk, right?
Mm-hmm. Drinking, when I've been drinking, it does affect my mental health.
You have to face the microphone when you're speaking, just for the first part.
When I'm drinking, it does affect my mental health. Like, I feel like when I'm in a low mood, I just feel a lot lower after I've been drinking. And so I actually make a contentious effort to not drink when I'm in my depressive phases, because I know that it's only gonna...
Yeah, that's fair. That's pretty admirable that you can notice when you're down and you don't use it as a coping mechanism. Because I'd like to say that I can't speak for Levi, but I've heard him talk about this where we both used our drinking as an escape because, you know, at that time in that first year of university, it was like, oh, all this shit is new, being overwhelmed by being an adult. And we were both undiagnosed with ADHD, had a lot of shit that was going on. So drinking was just something that was like, you're right. Like it makes you feel good being around people when you're drinking because you're like, oh yeah, I'm this cool guy. Right. And really, it was just an escape from reality, feeling intoxicated. And I don't know if you would feel this way, but do you feel like you kind of have a party persona? Like you're almost a different person when you're drinking?
Not all the time. I actually, I love that version of me when I can be more outgoing. It's not all the time when I'm drinking around people, though. It's literally a different version of me, and I have no control whether I become more outgoing or if I'm just gonna shy away. More often than not, I shy away more, but sometimes I guess I get, quote, lucky, and yeah, I'm just a lot more outgoing, and I don't care much about what's going on around me, and I have no anxiety, but it's very uncommon for that to happen.
Yeah, I was literally just gonna say, like, so it's like you have no anxiety, and I know that would be relieving, seeing as how you've been dealing with it for so long, but I had a point that I forgot. Wait. Yeah, this isn't going to be like a smooth transition, but I just had this thought in my mind while you were talking about how you don't drink when you're depressed. So what happens if you do drink when you're upset?
If I'm depressed when I'm drinking, then I just become a lot more depressed. Sometimes the depression and the poor mental states don't come until after I've already been drinking. Like I wouldn't actively start drinking when, like, while I'm going through a depressive state, but sometimes when I'm been drinking, a depressive state would occur, and I just find that it's a lot harder to kind of ride it out than normal.
Yeah. And could that, like, depressive state or could those depressed feelings be a consequence of what you did while you were drinking?
That's a good question. I think it's a case by case thing for me. Because not all the time when I'm drinking, like, not every time it results in a depressive state. I guess it just depends what kind of road my mind is going down while I'm drinking. So, like, yeah, I could start neutral, and then maybe I'll start thinking about some happy stuff, and then I just get more excited and more energetic, or it could be the opposite. A sad thought can cross my mind, and then it kind of leads me down that rabbit hole, and it's really hard to pull yourself out of it. Usually that's when I call it a night, if I find that I've managed to slip down that rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was asking that question more in a way like, do you get depressed because of what you did while you were drinking? Like, do you regret some of your actions?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes, yeah. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, why did I do that? Like, it's different when you made the mistake. Like, it's different when you're watching, like, those Instagram videos of drunk people just being silly,
mm-hmm.
and then actually being one of those drunk people being silly. It's just very different. A lot less fun when you're the one doing it. But at the end of the day, I feel like most people that see me being silly when I'm drunk react the same way I view people being silly when they're drunk, and don't really give it a second thought. They just say, oh, okay, well, that happened, and then just move on. Where, unlike me, if I did something silly when I'm drunk, I'm thinking about it for the next couple of days, and
mm-hmm.
kind of contemplate quitting drinking multiple times, but it never stands.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I can definitely say I've done some dumb shit while I was drunk too, and I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I did start drinking when I was younger. I said that earlier, and I can remember, I think I was like 14 or 15 or something, and I had a 2.6 of vodka. We were over at my friend's house. There was a few of us just partying, and I definitely drank way too much that I could handle. I shouldn't have been drinking at all because I was too young for that, right? But I was pretty fucked up. Like, I think I blacked out that night, and when I woke up, I remember my brother, my friends giving me shit because of all the dumb shit I did last night. I'm like, well, I couldn't have been that bad. Like, what? How much havoc could a 14-year-old wreak? Well, apparently, I broke an entire couch. I tried to kick down someone's door that lived there, which was pretty fucking stupid, and I somehow broke my friend's toe, but, well, not somehow, I think I just stomped on it. So, needless to say, when I'm blacked out, I'm pretty aggressive, which is surprising that it hasn't come back to me. And things like that are, I wouldn't say common, but that was one of the first times that I had a experience like that with alcohol, where I felt like an incredible amount of regret, and I felt like someone else. And yeah,
that's yeah, well, I can't I don't think I've ever been aggressive when I've been drinking. At least in public, I've never gone aggressive when I'm drinking. And even when I do get aggressive when I'm drinking, I don't act like... I'll tell you a story.
Oh, I'm so ready.
Something that took place in first year, and while I'm surprised I didn't get dinged for my damage deposit.
Oh boy.
I remember I went out one night, And yeah, I was a little louder than I usually am when I went out. And it was noticeable. One of my buddies told me, hey, we're going to the bar, but you should probably just go home and rest it off. So I did, but I was also really mad that he did that. So as soon as I got into my dorm, and Ryan can confirm this, as soon as I got in my dorm and as soon as I got into my room, I kicked a hole in my wall.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And yeah, no, and that's when I just had a complete meltdown. It's like, because I was like, holy crap, was I seriously that bad that night? Like, was I so bad that people noticed and like they're like, okay, we just need to take a break from you tonight? And I just felt really embarrassed and angry, and luckily I wasn't that angry when, like, walking home I was steaming, and then it was kind of slowly building up, and then once I got into my room I just let loose.
Yeah, the wall came right at you, hey?
Yeah. But yeah, I had a breakdown that night. And then afterwards I also opened up to, not like Ryan already knew, but I also was living with another high school buddy.
Mm-hmm.
His name's Jordan, and I opened up to him that night about my mental issues.
Yeah.
And I told him how I was getting medicated. He didn't know any of that until that night, but a lot of stuff just kind of spilled out.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess it's good that you were opening up a lot of things, like to your friends, to the wall, whatnot.
Literally.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I forget. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, that's what happens when you get out of control. And I think you said it best where you said, like, people could kind of notice that you were getting there. Because shit like that doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It's like that slow build up where you can see someone's like getting too fucked up that they can't control themselves. Like,
and it wasn't even so much that I was aggressive at that party. I think I was just being an ass, like just being too loud and like, woohoo! Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that I waited until I got home to let my aggression out, basically.
Mm-hmm. But, like, was that aggression because of the drinking, or was there other shit going on?
I think the aggression was amplified because of the drinking. I feel like I wouldn't have kicked a hole in my wall had I been sober and felt mildly rejected, or not mildly. I felt pretty rejected that night, but I don't think if I had been sober and met the same level of rejection, I would not have kicked a hole in my wall. Yeah. I think it was definitely the alcohol that made me do that too.
Yeah, that's understandable. I don't think I would have broke a couch or a toe if I was sober.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are just a couple of things that are off the top of my head. But, yeah, it's like you do dumb shit like that, and then you wake up the next day. And as someone with anxiety, that's just like, that's terrifying to think like, oh my God, what did I do? Why are all my friends pissed off at me? And then you hear what you did, and that can be brutal. Because I remember waking up after all my friends were, or after that night where everyone was like, Steven, you were such a fucking jackass that day. Like, what happened? And then my mind was just like going crazy, right? Like, oh, Steven, you're so shitty. You need to stop. You need to be better and all that stupid stuff. Well, not stupid stuff, but pretty much all the thoughts were just like based on those dumb things that I did when I was drunk. And again, like you said, like I wouldn't have done that when I was sober, which is one of the reasons now that I try to stay away from alcohol. Like I'm completely sober because aside from having the potential to be a dick when I'm drunk, I noticed that it's also pretty bad for my mental illness or my mental health. Where would you say you are now in terms of drinking?
I've cut down a lot since second year. I cut down even more since coming home for the summer. Actually, the first time I've had a lick of hard alcohol was literally last weekend. And then, of course, this weekend. But before then, it was always just a bit of wine and beer. Maybe a couple of coolers, too. Not in a night, but like sometimes in a night. It's always very sporadic. Some days I would come home and drink a lot of wine or beer. Some days I don't even have a single drink. Some days I just drink water. I'm like, yeah, not that I felt bad those days. I'm like, no, I really shouldn't be drinking right now. Is literally I've gone to the point where I just don't like drinking as much as I did. I still like drinking, but it's definitely calmed down a lot.
Yeah, like is that a conscious thing that you're doing?
Some of it's conscious, some of it is just I didn't have an appetite for it. Like not drinking any hard liquor since the past 2 weekends. That was conscious effort. I didn't feel like I needed to get that impaired. Just something minor to get the knots out of my head, pretty much. Just unwind a little bit, like a glass of wine or two, maybe a couple of beers, just have a bit of a feeling, but not like grossly like room spinning impaired.
Yeah. I'm trying more to like dig into your motivation behind that conscious effort of why that you're cutting down on your drinking.
So I talked to this about you earlier today when we were on our walk.
Yeah, we
were. It's more of a physical health thing. Not that I'm suffering from many physical detriments right now because of drinking, but just because I do realize that is definitely a risk. So I just want to mitigate it as best as I can while I'm still young, so that there can still be some repair.
And it's definitely different than going like cold turkey, but I should be more involved with peer health. I don't really know this for sure, but I think there is a harm reduction group, or there's just something to do with like substance use and abuse. Basically, harm reduction is like aiming to reduce the potential health and social harms associated with substance use and addiction that doesn't make you stop. So in a sense, that is what you're doing with your cutting down rather than stopping, right?
Yeah.
It's like that conscious effort where you realize, okay, this is doing some harm, but I'm not going to completely quit because, you know, like you said, it makes you feel better or it makes you feel good. But it's just like looking out for you in the future, right? Reducing that risk. Yeah.
And also like the present risks, like we talked about before, like just, you know, maybe
pregnancy.
Yeah. Well, one of them. But you know, maybe when I'm starting to drink, I'm not in a depressive state, but later down the lines, if my thoughts start getting darker, then that can be pretty hazardous for me. So choose what I drink carefully. Like I said, maybe a glass or two of wine or a couple of beers, nothing too high. Yeah.
See, the reason that, the reason I could never take a harm reduction approach to drinking is that I'm too impulsive to be able to just have like one or two drinks and be okay with that. Like if I'm drinking, I want to go all the way, or it's not realistic for me to have alcohol in the house in my presence without me expecting to like finish the whole thing within a few days. Like I don't have that self-control where I can go, okay, Steven, you shouldn't be drinking hard liquor, or okay, Steven, you shouldn't be drinking a few drinks. And I think I am doing a lot better now that I'm not drinking, because I can see how it affected my mental illness and mental health. One of the ways is like, if you get really fucked up, I shouldn't say that. If you get really drunk one night and then maybe you stayed up like super late, okay, well then the next day you're going to be waking up in the afternoon. You're going to feel like shit because you're hungover. Might skip your meds. That's what I did. And then you're probably not going to eat right. You're probably not going to take care of yourself that day. And then that entire day is just like a wash, right? And then maybe that leads into the next day. But for me, that like, I need a consistent schedule. I need a consistent routine with my ADHD and bipolar. Like, I need to be sleeping the same. I need to be eating the same, just to like manage them. So when that gets all out of whack, it's like almost not worth it for a night of fun.
Right. And actually, you said something about, you said how you can't even be in the presence of your own alcohol. Like, you can't possess it without it posing a danger to you. And that's, I had earlier this summer, I was the same way. I'd say there was a good 2-week period where I didn't drink at all this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, it's literally what you said. Like, knowing myself, I can't have one and just stop there.
Mm-hmm.
If I have one, I'm going to keep going. So, and that still remains true, even though I currently drink, like not drinking right now during this podcast, but last night and the night before, like I'm not abstaining from drinking anymore like I did earlier this summer. But I do recognize that it's never just one with me. If I have one, it's going to be more, at least until I get to that buzz that I find so desirable.
Mm-hmm. But the difference now is that you realize how bad you can get, but you still stop yourself, like you said, before your head gets spinning. And I think that's like a good approach to the harm reduction model, in that you're no longer kicking holes in the wall.
Yeah.
But you're still enjoying yourself, right? Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think there shouldn't be any shame in drinking, really. There shouldn't be, well, for me there is, but I don't think it's something that you should feel guilty about, right?
Yeah, as long as you're not harming others, drinking shouldn't be anything to be ashamed about. Also, like, not saying that I do use it as a coping mechanism, but I know that there are people, well, like you said, you and Levi, in first year, use it as a coping mechanism to, like, oh, we're in the real world now, we're adults, this is scary.
Yeah, well, it was that combined with the fact that we both really didn't want to be alive and we hated ourselves a little bit, so it was kind of like just a way to get away from yourself without getting away from yourself, you know? Like, you can't just sleep all day. But
I mean,
yeah, I mean you can, but I think that's another reason why alcohol is so dangerous for me, because I did use it as a negative coping mechanism. Like, when I'm drunk, I'm not thinking as much about what I'm doing, what I'm saying. I'm not thinking about what I have to do or why I feel shitty about myself or why I feel shitty. I'm just in the moment doing whatever, maybe being a jackass. It's like there's brief moments when I'm drunk where I feel like I am no longer dealing with the shit that I have to deal with, you know?
Right.
For me, that coping mechanism was so good that I didn't need anything else. I didn't need anything else because all I had to do was just stay drunk. And I guess that's what I did, just to not feel shitty. But then I felt shitty because I was drinking all the time. Yeah, it was a bad cycle.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And that's why, well, there's research out there, there's resources or references out there that show that alcoholism and depression are kind of run in, how do you say it? They run like parallel to each other, right? Like, that's why I'm surprised as you saying someone who is depressed and anxious that drinking isn't something that's like a big deal for you, right?
No, for me, it's not a big deal, but, yeah, no, I don't, drink to escape my reality. It's literally a recreational thing for me.
Yeah, and that's really good.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, kind of, like, that's the reason why I do it, but how often I do it, and sometimes I do it alone for recreation too. Like, that's not nearly as good, but at least the motive isn't
escape, a coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's definitely better than using it as something to get away from yourself. Because I know even now when my head gets loud or I have a lot of shit going on, I just want to get wasted, but I'm not going to do that to myself because I know that I have to start actually handling my problems. But drinking was nice because it almost made me feel like I didn't have any, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I know that feeling.
Like you're carefree, right? Because you're drunk.
Yeah, you're drunk. Do anything and people might just shrug it off as, oh, you're drunk, it's okay, and wake up the next morning and just continue on as always.
Mm-hmm. And see, one of the things that I'm struggling with now is being sober as a 20-year-old. Like, isn't it weird that people normalize drinking more than they normalize not drinking? Like, anytime I'm out with my friends and they ask, why aren't you drinking? I'm like, well, you know, but
because I don't want you.
Yeah, exactly. But then that's followed up with why. Like, in an ideal world, it would be nice to be able to say, well, I don't drink, and then that would
no
just be
questions
that, right?
asked.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not always fun to go into detail about how shitty it made you feel or how shitty it could make you be. But
just when people ask you why, give them a link to this podcast.
Yeah, the entire fucking thing. Actually, that's another thought that I had. I think it's kind of like an analogy for how I feel with my bipolar is, you know, when you're like drinking and you have that really good night where you feel like you're euphoric, like you don't care what's going on, you're blowing all your money or on whatever, you're speaking with strangers, trying to sleep with them, whatever.
Oh yeah. Like the world is yours, basically. Yeah, that's kind of like what hypomania is for me. And then the crash, which is the hangover, and you start to regret what the things that you were doing while you were drunk in that other world. And that would be like the depressive state. So it's kind of how I would explain some of the ways I feel with bipolar, if that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, no, it's interesting that, okay, I don't know if I'm finding the right word here, or analogy, or metaphor.
I can 100% just edit it out if you think it's shitty.
All right. Yeah, I just find that comparison between your hypo states and your depressive states being that of like the good night where you think the world is yours, and then the morning after when you're hungover, you're like, oh God. And I guess, like, I'm sure that gives me a better idea of what you go through, but I still feel like I'll never know like the full picture.
Yeah.
But at least I get a better idea of where you're coming from. And that makes a lot of sense that you like just comparing the two.
Yeah. And I feel like that is a fairly relatable example, not to toot my own horn, but yeah, like you can kind of see why it's more or why it's difficult to deal with bipolar, because it's like when you're on top of the world and then you come crashing down, it almost feels like you're a lower low than because you were at that high, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like down here looking at who you were up here, and you feel so much regret. And even some days I'm like, I wish I was that person all the time. But and like you can feel that. You even said that about some of the things or some of the times that you're drinking, you're like, I wish I could be that person, right?
Yeah. And sometimes I am that person, but it's never my, like, say it's, okay, it sounds weird when I say it's not my idea, because, you know, I clearly say that I do want to be that guy that's way up here, but it's never my choice. He just comes out, and I have no control of when he comes out. Like, egg night, Nick.
Egg night, Nick.
Egg
Yeah.
night.
That one night you were... What the hell was it even?
I was drinking, like, Di-Serono and Coke, and I think I drank, like, half a bottle, and then we went to Jack's right after to pre-drink.
But weren't you really on about something with Seinfeld? Or was that a different night?
No, I was...
What was it? You were, like, really obsessed with something that night, and I can't remember.
Was this the night of our roommate meeting?
Oh, God,
This was when we were still in CQ. Oh, God. And we were like 2 months late with our RA meeting. And I was already hammered when we were having this meeting.
Oh, you could tell you were hammered too.
Yeah. Like, I didn't hide it at all.
I know, you were trying to vibe with the RA.
And he said, okay, everything that's happening here is on the record. And then, oh God, what was it?
Didn't you say something about a movie?
Yeah, I was like, I think I said, Pirates of the Caribbean was a very underrated movie.
Yeah, and you're like, put that on the record.
Put that on the record.
Oh, fuck.
God. See, those are the times that I like.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I did feel a little silly the morning after, but out of all the silly things I've done while being intoxicated, that's low on my list of regrets.
Yeah, that's fair. Man, okay, well, this is gonna be a fucking fun mood shift. Before you told me that story, you mentioned of how that egg night Nick that was talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, RA, it's not your choice when he comes out, and that even like furthers my point of that analogy between bipolar and being drunk, is that I don't get to choose when that hypomanic guy gets to come out. I don't get to choose when that guy who talks about Pirates of the Caribbean comes out. He just kind of does. Sometimes he's the guy who's talking about Pirates of the Caribbean. Sometimes he's going to break your toe. But it's very much not good if I include alcohol into that.
Right. So yeah, like for you, alcohol would be a much bigger problem, because like you already go through like those highs and lows, and then adding alcohol to that would just amplify those highs and lows. Yeah. And like,
oh yeah, 100%. Like when I'm hypomanic and I drink, holy hell is it fun. But I do some stupid shit, man. Like, oh God, I wish I had examples on my mind, but my head, just give me a second.
Let's talk about Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh God. Overrated movie.
Yeah. Underrated.
Overrated. I can't think of any examples right now, but I know that I can be a jackass when I'm hypomanic and drinking. But let's steer this conversation back to anxiety, maybe.
Oh yeah.
So when you're, hold on, I had something in my head, but it's gone now. What would you say? What would you have to say about your anxiety and drinking that you haven't already said?
That I haven't already said. Did I say that I did tell you that it gets worse sometimes when I'm drinking, because I'm always afraid I'm going to make an ass of myself, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, does it get better when you're drinking sometimes?
Sometimes. Well, that's egg night Nick, basically. That's, yeah, sometimes it's on the opposite, and where I don't feel any anxiety, and not really on, well, I shouldn't say opposite, and more of a neutral grounds where I'm not worrying, but I'm also not, egg night Nick.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to use as reference.
Mm-hmm. But that must be pretty relieving for you, right? When you don't have those anxious thoughts.
It's so nice. Like, then I can actually just enjoy the buzz that's going through my mind. And when I'm not having negative thoughts, or when I'm not worried about what people are thinking about me, like the people around me are thinking about me, then it's definitely one of the more desirable outcomes of drinking. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that isn't always the case for me. Sometimes it goes really good, and then you get egg night, Nick. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I would settle for that neutral. Oh, I'm not anxious, but I'm also not out there.
Yeah.
Egg night, Nick.
So you can kind of see, or I guess we can both kind of see why people use it as like some form of self-medication.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's like alcohol is kind of like. Sorry, I'm just stretching.
Yeah, no problem.
Alcohol is pretty much like.
You're still too far.
Alcohol is pretty much like any other drug. The difference being is
it's more socially acceptable.
More socially acceptable. People drink to self-medicate. Same way people smoke weed to self-medicate. Same way people do meth to self-medicate. It's at the end of the day, people like to use it as a self-medicator is. I definitely understand why people do that, and admittedly, probably once or twice, like I said, I use it to untie the knots after a long day.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that shouldn't be why. That shouldn't be the main cause, or it could, it'll be the cause, but it shouldn't be the main motivation for drinking, because if that's your main motivation, it's just unhealthier.
Mm-hmm. It's something that you should take a look at, but that's not necessarily saying that using substances or drinking is bad, but it's kind of like the way that you use them, right? Like if you realize the risks associated with them and you try to reduce that, then that's better than just going all out with self-medication in ways that are going to really hurt you. Well, it's easy to understand that substance use and alcohol is harmful.
Yeah.
But it can be more harmful based on the reason why you're using it, right?
Right.
Is that kind of what you're trying to say?
Yeah. At the end of the day, alcohol is still harming you in one way or the other, whether it's physically and mentally, but it can be more harmful if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like if you're using it more for self-medication instead of recreation, or if you're aware that you're unhappy and you're using alcohol as a means to change that, more often than not, can make you even more unhappier. And it's like you said, if you you drink a lot, then you'll wake up later the next day and possibly skip your meds, and basically the day will just be a write-off. I'd say, me included, most people do it because like I said, it just feels good. Not necessarily that I'm escaping my reality, but I just like the feeling of being drunk. definitely depends on your state of mind. I don't know. I'm just rambling on at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. I just want to say that, like, I guess I kind of want to say that I don't think there's anything. I wouldn't really say it's wrong to self-medicate with alcohol. It's dangerous, yeah, but saying it's wrong kind of says, like, you shouldn't be doing this at all. But sometimes it's just unrealistic for people to not be self-medicating with it if they don't understand that some things are going on.
I didn't mean to make it sound like it's wrong, but it's definitely a lot less healthy.
Yeah, because again, it's like some realistically, some people don't realize that they have other things going on, and that's what makes them feel better. So it's like, okay, let's look at this situation and how can we, reduce the danger of it a little bit? How can we make this so that it's a little less harmful for you? At the end of the day, I just want to say again that drinking isn't bad per se, and you really shouldn't feel guilty if you're drinking or you're not drinking. I think it's just important to examine why you're doing either in those situations, because it is harmful, right? But at the same time, you can still have fun. It's just, it gets more challenging when you have mental illnesses on top of that other stuff. Then you need to take a more critical approach to alcohol.
Yeah. And yeah, at the end of the day, like, people drink for their own reasons, whether it's to self-medicate or literally recreational. It's nothing to be ashamed of course. It's important to know why you're drinking, which is pretty much what you just said, and I'm just restating it.
Well, it's not a terrible way to, or it's not a terrible thing to redo, but yeah. And I don't know if this is going to apply to anyone, but if you are struggling with your drinking or you want to look at your drinking habits, you should look a little bit into the Peer Health Harm Reduction group or whatever they're called. I'm going to link it in the description because I honestly can't remember what that group is called, but there's also a lot of resources on campus and there's resources online too, which I'm going to link, because I know from my own experience that stopping yourself from drinking or slowing down when you're using it as a means of self-medication or you just can't seem to stop it is not exactly easy to do by yourself. And there really is no shame in asking for help to be able to get through it, really. So, yeah, I think that's everything. I don't really have anything else to say. Thank you for coming back, Nick. We hope to have you again.
We'll be happy to come back on.
Goodbye. So hopefully you guys liked this episode. Make sure to check out our website in the description and subscribe on whatever platform you're on. You'll also find some resources and references we used for this episode in the description. And once again, we are not medical professionals and you should see your doctor if you're concerned about your mental well-being. We'll see you next time.